Hey, Lord of the Rings fans, it is your favorite Lord of the Rings content creator. You like how I say that, right? Favorite, like I'm just assuming that I'm your favorite, right? It's because I know I am. New Better, Do Better, here with my wonderful host, KaliCosplay, on our tremendous, stupendous podcast, Voices of Arda. I'm giving myself a lot of praise, giving ourselves a lot of praise because we deserve it. We work hard and we're bringing you the best guests, the best possible guests. And right now, we have one of the best guests that we possibly could have ever had. We got JannaTheHutt in the building. Super fan of hers. Wonderful TikTok content creator, Instagram content creator, extraordinaire. She literally does everything. Is there anything you do not do? I mean, she's amazing across the board. She does fencing, which we're going to get into because today's episode is about swords. And we're going to get into her sword play, but also she does cosplay, just like Callie here. She does wonderful Star Wars things. She does crocheting, where she does. Tell me the name. Tell me the name.
Leku.
Lekus. Lekus. If
Leku.
you don't know about her Lekus, then you don't know about life. Make sure you go to her shop and you pick up her Leku. But I'm talking too much. I'm gonna let Callie get into it. So, Callie, what's up? What's going on?
Well, I mean, usually we let the guests, introduce themselves, but I don't know. Do you feel like you could do a better job of introducing yourself than NewBetta just did here? I mean, that was
I
that
think
was
he did so well. Like I don't have anything else to say. He
that
did it
was the
so well. That
Let
was
us
that
know your
was
chef's kiss.
socials. Let us know
excellent
where we can
praise.
find you. Let us know your socials. Let us know exactly what you do.
Yeah,
I'm
let
just
us
going
know
off
where
what
you are
I,
on TikTok. Let us know about your Etsy store. Let us know where to find you, how to support you.
Yeah, I am on TikTok and Instagram under Jonna the Hut, under Jonna underscore the Hut. And yeah, my account's private right now, so just send me a follow request on TikTok. But most of my content also goes on Instagram. So if you want to know me better, I post a lot of stories about little tidbits of my life all the time. And my shop on Etsy is under Tangled Tentacle Co. It's all one word. If you go on my Insta or my TikTok, it should be in my link tree in my bio.
that is awesome, man. Thank you so much. Thank
Perfect.
you for being a guest on our show. Let me say it one more time, Voices of Arda. So if you aren't following us, make sure you follow us on our YouTube channel. And also you can find us on Spotify. And I'm pretty sure our episodes are going up on Google Podcasts, but I don't check that as much. So don't quote me on that. So today's episode, we are going to be talking about the swords of Arda, or the swords of Middle Earth, and we have our resident sword master here. They're probably going to try to be humble and say, I'm not a master, I'm just learning. But I like to call them a master because I've seen some of the work they do. So, yeah, we got swords, literally like the premier thing in Lord of the Rings. They have names, they have really cool names. They are awesome tools, weapons. They are magnificent. Some swords, just off the top of my head, that I love, are my favorite sword of all time is called Glamdring the Foehammer. It's a single-handed broadsword, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on that. But wonderful sword that Gandalf uses. It was wielded by the King of Turgon. It was made in Gondolin. I mean, I can go on and on. We have Orcris the Goblin Cleaver. We have
I
Narsil.
mean, you could go on, but before you go on and on, I have a question for you. I have a question,
I, I
sort of
feel like
about swords.
I
It's
feel
not
like this is not a
about
question.
swords of
I feel
Middle
like this.
Earth, but it's a
I feel
very
like this is a
important
joke
question. So why couldn't anyone else remove the sword from the stone?
because they hate your jokes. That's
Weak. Because they didn't have the authorization. Ah!
But
oh,
Yeah. Sword
what is it?
jokes. Sword
Is it
jokes.
like
Sword jokes.
psychosomatic when I physically have the pain in my chest?
yeah.
Physically, it's not like a good laughing pain.
And what is it like when your pain gives me pleasure? There must be like we probably have to get a psych on here or something, but
Oh man.
For
Back
all
to
next episode.
swords. Back to
right.
swords. So
All right, you can go back to your Middle Earth swords then.
all right, let's get back to the swords. So cool thing about the swords of Middle Earth is many of the swords have abilities, and the swords like Glamdring glows blue when it's literally orcs are near. So that is one of the cool things about some of the swords. They're enchanted. Some of them, literally, maybe they don't rust. Like many of the dwarves created swords that don't rust, but they have wonderful abilities. There's all different types of swords, shapes, and things like that. So I want to hear from our resident sword expert, fencer, how she got into swords, and then maybe we can compare some of the swords she uses with some of the swords from Middle Earth. Maybe I can give you introductions to some of the swords if you don't know them, let you know about them and their abilities and maybe their histories, and you do the same. You let me know your history in fencing and how you got into swords. So we want to hear that.
Yeah, so I got into historical fencing, specifically under historical European martial arts, HEMA for short. Like November 2019, I attended a Give a Girl a Sword event. And it was at a university, but it was open to everybody. And I just went there like on a recommendation, and I was like, whoa, like they're actually using swords that don't look like like Olympic fencing foils, like those stabby ones. And so so it was really cool because I grew up. I did watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy when I was much younger when it first came out, and it
Okay.
was definitely one of my favorite movies growing up. I like the Highlander.
Oh, what you know about Highlander?
Okay, so like I was obsessed.
Oh, the hands are coming out. This means she about to get
Oh,
wicked on me.
we're
She about to let me know.
excited.
Like,
Whoa,
this
whoa.
there could be only one. There could be only
Your
one.
version of New
There
Betta.
could be only one. So like, okay, so like Highlander was one of my favorite shows when I was a kid because like my mom had like a crush on the TV show guy, Duncan MacLeod, right?
Duncan MacLeod, word, facts.
So yeah, like so when I started training back in 2019, and then the quarantine happened, the pandemic started, and so I had like four intro classes, and I spent like the majority of 2020 just like training by myself. And so I did a lot of, so I didn't really get like, I spent a lot of time just like in the beginner. And it was during that time that so everybody was home, all of the HEMA people were home. And so I was like, I didn't know how big the community was, or it's not a huge super big community, but it's very tight knit, and there's a lot of HEMA clubs all over the world. And so I started posting on Instagram, and then people started finding me, like instructors. Everybody was bored at home, so they started like finding me. And that's when I started meeting all of these other historical fencers, and they're the best people. Like the community has its problems, obviously. Like as a person of color, as a woman, there's not a lot of people who look like me in the sport. And I decided that I'm going to make a space for myself because I did not see myself. I did
Very
not see
important.
Yeah, I did not see any beginners. There weren't like women of color that I was seeing. There was like one I became really good friends with her. She has her own podcast called By the Sword, and she is Filipino and British. And
Nice.
yeah, so we just kind of connected during that time, and we became really close. And I found out later on that she was the one who started the Give a Girl a Sword event that I attended.
Oh,
So
nice.
Wow.
she started that, and then other clubs started hosting the same thing. So it was really cool. And so yeah, it was really
That's
awesome.
dope. That's dope.
Yeah,
That is
and
awesome.
so
Yeah.
Shout out to her. What's her name?
her name is Fran Laquata, and the podcast
I'm
is
gonna say
called
Fran
By the
because I
Sword.
can't get that last name, but shout out to Fran.
By the sword.
By the sword. So
Yeah.
follow her podcast.
Yeah, so I, again, like I was a beginner, so I was the historical fencing like kind of celebrity that was just like chronicling everything that they were doing like from the beginning. I started out like zero. Like I had like no skills. Like I would be looking back at my videos from like 2020, and I'm just like, whoa. Like whoa, yeah, like
A lot of
whoa.
room for growth there.
Gotta
Yeah.
start somewhere.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
start somewhere.
but it's really nice because a lot of the people that, because so a lot of people seem to have picked up historical fencing during that time. So a lot of people were finding my content, and it
Right.
was really cool because they're like, okay, it's not as intimidating seeing someone who's at the same level at them, or maybe like a little bit just above their level,
Mm-hmm.
versus because when I started, all I was seeing were people who were already like doing tournaments, who were medaling, who were teaching, and it was very intimidating, right? It's almost like, and especially not seeing myself reflected by those people that are very prominent in the community. So like, just my presence was kind of refreshing for a lot of people, and I've made a lot of really good friends in the community because of that. And then when I met Fran, she shared her platform with me, and we do a swords and mental health episode. So she does like one every week, and then we do one together. And sometimes we'll have other people come in, and we talk about swords in conjunction with like our own mental health journeys and our own life journeys. So a lot of people really gravitated toward that because um, historical fencing is such an interesting community, because a lot of people seem to be like neurodivergent, and like have been through like a lot of like hardships in their lives. It's very interesting, and I feel like a lot of us bonded together. The people that I've met, at least, have become friends with me, kind of bonded together because of our own similar experiences, and how historical fencing, HEMA in particular, kind of saved us in some ways.
Nice.
As dramatic as that may sound, but
Oh, that's the truth.
yeah,
It's the
Things
truth.
like
I
that.
mean, it's like we get that from this community, right? I mean, like what you're saying is resonates with I think the two of
Because
us
even though
because
we're
we
not stabbing people like you, we can relate, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
finding this community gives me an outlet in
Mm,
a place that I don't have in my own community. Just because people don't all have the same likes and
yeah,
interests, and
yeah.
it's hard, being a blurred sometimes. I don't even like to call myself a blurred because I'm very cool. First of all, in real life, you don't even understand. I
I
am
can
like
believe that.
one of the coolest
I can
people
believe
where I
that.
live at. So it's like I'm an anomaly. I'm also a blurred who likes Lord of the Rings. But in the hood, I got the hood pass. I'm good. I can go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? So it's weird. But like I said, that having that outlet, having people to talk to and confide into, and have the same likes and things like that. So I'm sure
Yeah,
it's the same in your community
yeah,
with those people that you share with the fencing community. So
yeah,
I think that's awesome that you have that outlet. I'm very happy for you
yeah,
that you
yeah,
get to
yeah,
do that.
it's not dramatic at all to say that community saves lives, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
Like
yeah. It
yeah.
really does. I've been through a couple of hardships. Last year, and it was the community that really like came through and like helped me through like some really tough times, because I'm a single mom, and life hasn't been that easy for me and my child. So just having a community of like people that like really want not only to see me succeed, but like also want to support me in my own personal life means a lot, especially being someone who doesn't really have a supportive family, if that makes sense. And so going back to my Highlander story, so I got into
oh yeah,
HEMA, right? So
Highlander.
2021, I went to my first cutting tournament. Basically, you get sharp swords like two behind
Like
me,
these.
and
Oh, I love them.
yeah, and you cut tatami mats like they do in like Japanese, like cutting. It's the same thing.
Hmm.
And so there's this event, tournament in Las Vegas called Combat Con, and the guy who plays Duncan MacLeod was there.
What?
So I guess he does that event every year, and I was so excited. Like, I was like freaking out because I saw him in the hallway when I got to the hotel, and
Oh
I was
wow.
like, "Oh my god, it's Duncan, it's Adrian Paul!" And so it was like early in the morning, so there weren't a lot of people yet. So like, I like, it was a day of the cutting tournament. So I had already gone, and it was my first tournament as well. So I was already done. And so I went to his table, and I bought a picture, and I bought a selfie. It was so expensive, but I'm like, no, it's Adrian.
So worth
It's
it.
it's Duncan MacLeod. And
Yeah.
so And he actually, like, we had a chat about swords. I was like freaking out internally
Oh,
because he
that's what's
saw,
up.
because I brought my swords with me, and I had like this little bag, and you could see, like, the crossguard of my sword. Um, it
Go
wasn't
ahead,
this
break them
sword.
out.
It was this sword. So I had like a little. So I brought this sword with me, but I wasn't cutting with it.
Oh wow,
Uh,
beautiful.
yeah, so this is the sword that I had on my bag that he saw, and he was like, "Oh, so what are you doing here?" So I told him that, I was at my first tournament, I was in the cutting tournament, and we kind of just talked about swords and, like, like experiences and stuff like that, and he was so nice.
What?
And
Six
That's
degrees.
awesome.
6 degrees of separation here. Okay,
yeah.
follow me. Follow me. Adrian Paul plays the Highlander in
Uh-huh.
the show. Now, from the original Highlander movie, Sean Connery is in the original movie,
Yes,
and
he
he's also
is.
in one of the sequels as well, right?
Yeah.
Sean Connery was supposed to originally play Gandalf,
No, I
but
did
he
not know
turned down the
that.
role, and he would have wielded Glamdring the Foehammer. So,
Hmm.
6 degrees of separation.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
So
I
that
didn't know
is,
that.
I didn't know that
Yes.
either. That's interesting.
That's
Yeah,
very
I know some things. I know
interesting.
some things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The more
So,
you know, the more you
Oh,
know.
the more you
before
know.
you put that away, can we see more of it? Does it have a name?
Yes. I called. So this is my very first fetter. So it's not sharp. It's for
You're holding the
safe.
blade very
Yes.
confidently. So.
Yes. So this is for historical sparring. So it's got like a little bit of like flex to the blade.
I just
Okay.
saw it do that. I went, huh?
So it's a safety feature because when you thrust someone in the face, if it's too, and there are stiff blades out there, you
Mm-hmm.
can injure someone if your blade is too stiff. So you want that flex. So when you thrust, it doesn't, like, you know what I
It
mean. You don't get the
gives.
full force of the blade, if that makes sense.
What?
So because it
Are we talking
bends.
about swords here?
Yeah, we're talking about. So look
Come
at the
on.
bend on it. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
Wow.
there are stiffer
That's
Um,
awesome.
swords though.
you
Um,
wear a lot of
You
protective equipment.
you do.
do.
You
So
you
everybody's safe.
Yeah. So everybody's safe. So we wear fencing masks, and the fencing masks, it's the same that you see for Olympic fencing. They're just a higher rating for
Oh.
impact, and then you wear another layer that protects the back of your head, and then you wear a fencing jacket.
Mhm.
I will show you. I have my jacket here.
What
Cool.
is the
Um.
name of your sword, may I ask?
Oh,
Oh
the
shoot,
name of
sorry.
no, it's okay. The name of my
So
sword,
excited.
yeah, the name of my sword is Resilience. It is my first fetter. I like it's so it's made by a company in Eastern Europe. I think it's like Slovakia. Um, and it is one of their most expensive fetters.
Mm-hmm.
It's got this etching on here. I
Oh,
don't
we
know if
got
you can
some
see
writing
it.
on there, some etching and some
Oh.
Yeah.
some cool stuff, man. Wow.
Yeah,
She got
so
ancient runes on her sword.
so it's
Mhm.
actually it's based off of a historical etching on a real sword in a museum. I don't remember which one, but it's based off of a historical etch on a sword.
So
Um
before we get into your equipment, which we're going to
yeah.
definitely get into and stuff like that, we're gonna reel this in and we're gonna bring this back to the Lord of the Rings, which this podcast is about.
Okay.
So your wonderful sword is called Resilience, and Callie knows that we have several swords in Middle Earth. With you like how I say Earth because I'm from New York. Middle Earth,
Mother Earth.
Middle
Earth.
Earth. Several swords from Middle Earth that have famous names. Callie, how about you introduce some swords to me, and I'll do my best to introduce those swords to Janna, and then we can go back to her wonderful equipment and we can continue our story. But I do want to talk to her about some of the wonderful swords from Middle Earth and of Middle Earth and things that they did historically and why they're so important to the story.
All right, so you've already mentioned Glamdring the Foehammer many times. Is there anything else you would like to tell us about Glamdring the Foehammer?
It's the best sword ever.
It's the best sword.
That's
It glows
the
blue.
best sword.
You can knock
Yeah.
people on the head with the hilt.
You could, yes, it's
Uh,
called the faux hammer. It's also called beater. Literally, the orcs are terrified of this blade. They run in terror from it. When they see it, they know it. And you can also hit people on the head with it. It's called the faux hammer. It is amazing. I'm sure you saw the Lord of the Rings movie. You've seen Gandalf wielding it, and he also bludgeoned people to death with the sword. So yes, it is amazing. I love that sword. It is strong enough to break the sword, the magical flame sword of a Balrog. We saw him do that on the bridge of Khazad-dûm. So I just want to say that it's my personal favorite sword of all time.
Pretty
It's
good
echoed
sword.
throughout the ages. It lasted all the way from the first age all the way to the third age. And yeah, it is special. So, Callie, next sword.
Next sword, probably one that every most people know from the movies. The sword that Aragorn had.
Yes, so originally the sword was named Narsil, and it was wielded by Isildur's father, Elendil the Tall, and literally no one could withstand him when he had this sword. And this is a sword he used when he fought Sauron at the end of the Second Age on the slopes of Mount Doom. When Sauron came out and he wrestled with Elendil and Gilgalad, and he was thrown down, and he died, and the sword broke beneath him, but Isildur picked up the broken shard of the sword and cut the ring from Sauron's hand. So it is literally renowned. Now, later, it was reforged when Aragorn came into the picture and he was about to become king. He always carried this sword. It was an heirloom of his family and of his house. And the sword was reforged by the elves of Rivendell. And it was reforged and named anew Andril, the Flame of the West. And it had that same light, and literally Sauron was a little scared of this sword because he knew that was that sword that cut the ring from his finger so long ago. And it is probably the most well-known sword beside Glamdring in the Lord of the Rings. Everybody knows this sword because it's so famous for its deed. It's the sword that we see Boromir drop. He drops the hilt of the sword, and then he's like, "Oh, the shards of Narsil," but he doesn't pick it up, which I don't like in the movie. I don't like that. He would have had respect
So
for that sword.
disrespectful.
He would have had respect for that sword. That's one of the changes, but neither here nor there. Neither here nor there. But yes, this is a sword Elrond brings to Aragorn in the movie. In the book, he doesn't bring it. He has the sword made when they leave out to Rivendell. Very important sword. Awesome. It was made by Telkar, a dwarven smith from the city of Nogrod in the Blue Mountains in the First Age. Telkar was the greatest dwarven smith of all time. He is my favorite dwarf of all time. He created so many great things. And just for a side note, the swords and blades that Telkar made were so great that the sword that he made, Narsil, literally cut the ring from Sauron's hand. He also made a knife which cut the Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. These two things are the probably most important events that happened in the world. Like the Silmaril being cut from Morgoth's crown is a huge deal. You couldn't do it. And that's that knife that he made, Angrist, it was Iron Cleaver, that's what it means, cut the Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. Morgoth is Sauron's boss, Sauron's master. So imagine the devil incarnate, and you cut a Silmaril from his crown with this sword made by this wonderful dwarf, with this knife, sorry. And then later, thousands and thousands of years later, a sword that he made, it finds its way in the hands of Elendil, and he uses it to fight Sauron. And when it even breaks, his son Isildur uses the broken hilt to cut the ring of power, the ring of power, to cut that ring from Sauron's hand. So you can understand that why I'm so excited about the swords, the knife, and Telkar, their maker, and his craft and his abilities. Absolutely wonderful. So I think that's very cool. I think you wanted to know that. I think deep down inside you're like excited for that.
we really were. Oh my goodness, there are so many amazing. Oh my goodness, I don't even know what to ask
I
about
have
next.
I have a question. Like,
Yeah.
what is a sword, as someone who is like super newbie to the Lord of the Rings universe? Um, what is a sword that is very close to like a long sword, like the ones I have? In
I would say literally Narsil is
Okay,
very close to that.
Narsil
It's a
and Judil.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the long. It's a very long sword. It's probably one of the longest swords that we know. Probably Aaron Roof. That is a sword wielded by the king of the Sindar elves.
okay.
This is a thought in my head. I'm not 100% sure. as to the make of that sword, but I would imagine it's a long sword. It's wielded by the tallest elf ever, so I would imagine it had to be very long.
Yeah.
His reach was crazy, so I would imagine he carried a giant sword. So it was named Aaron Ruth, and it got passed down throughout the ages, and all the kings of Numenor wielded this sword and carried this sword. So it is a wonderful sword that was kept and preserved and handed down from generation to generation. Unfortunately, the last king of Numenor, who probably possessed that sword, was buried in a cave and has yet to be released again, and won't get released again until the end of time. So that sword has yet to be seen on Earth again. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
but a
Yeah.
fencing sword that you may like, I think
That's
probably the closest thing to a fencing sword would be Fingolfin's sword, Ringle. Literally, he used it to duel Morgoth, and it is said that it glittered like ice. And like I just picture like a long, like fencing type sword that he used, and he was so quick. Morgoth is a giant
yeah.
being that tried to like smash him with a hammer called Grond, and he would dodge him and literally cut him. He cut him 7 times and wounded him, and he never healed from the pain of these wounds. And finally, even when he was defeated, he Morgoth tried to step on him, and he used Ringo to hew the foot of Morgoth, and he ever on he walks on one foot because he's hurt by that sword. So Ringle is one of the lesser known but more important swords in the history, and I liken it to a fencing sword. Maybe not traditional fencing like you're using those swords,
Yeah.
but very much
In
the fencing I
spirit.
know of.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see you being Fingolfin. I'm going to call you Fingolfin now.
Oh, I love
Jenna
that.
Fingolfin.
Yay! I have been christened.
You have been Chris.
Like how for like measure. So how long is the longsword behind you? If
Right.
Anduril is about the size of a claymore, which is like the Scottish longsword, um, how long is like I've I think I do actually. I have a picture of myself holding a
Yes.
claymore in person, and it's like just looking at it like but like what? How do yours compare? Are they like those look huge? Those look huge
I
on the wall behind
honestly
you.
like to be honest, like I'm not very good. Like I'm not a super like encyclopedia of swords, but
Well, go ahead. Don't mind me. I'm going to eat because I haven't
Go
eaten all
for it.
day and I'm
This
hungry.
is our back-to-back
Okay,
podcasting
so
days. So
this is the very first sharp sword that I ever had, and this is actually a historical one. This is an Oakshot like 18C. So there's this kind of like a catalog of historical swords that this dude like made a long time ago, and this is a copy of one of those swords in the his little catalog. And this is a competition cutter. It is too big and heavy for me.
it's
This is
very
about
broad.
I'm 4'10", so it just goes under like my armpit.
It's a
Oh, wow.
long sword, yeah. Is it
Yeah.
heavy?
I think it's about like 3 pounds, so it's not
Jeez.
super heavy. Like I can wield it with like one hand. Like,
It's
Okay.
like
but
freaking Cloud from
yeah, this
Final
It looks like
Fantasy.
a video game sword.
yeah,
Like it doesn't look
yeah, it's very it's a very fun sword to cut with, but it is too heavy and too big for me. I have a friend who's gonna make me a sword that's appropriate for my height, but this is the sword that I used to cut in my first tournament. I don't know how long it is, to be honest, like on top of my head. I'm not a
well,
sword.
I
I'm,
mean,
I'm
so
not a sword historian.
it's about 4 feet,
Yeah,
so yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Awesome.
that is pretty cool. Oh, we're testing out your microphone wire
It's
here.
We're
okay.
testing it out. The
It's
link.
all right. It's all good. Okay. And then I have, so that one is an Italian longsword.
Okay.
Hold on. I will have to take my.
You go right ahead. Don't worry about it.
She'll come back to us. She's going to get the sword. It's just coming back. They're
So
so much bigger than I thought
so
they would
this is
be.
also another sharp. This is actually a pretty good like intro sharp sword for anybody who's like looking to get into cutting, because it's hella cheap, but it's pretty decent, especially after you get it properly sharpened. So I've cut with this a few times, and it's a fun sword. It's a lot lighter than this sword, but it's also pretty long. It's a little bit longer than the other one, but not that
Yeah.
Okay.
much. Um,
So, Jenna, I heard a secret.
yes. What is the secret?
I heard a secret. I heard that you had a special rainbow sword.
I do. I will show it to you guys. Let me hang this up.
I want to know about the rainbow sword.
We're
Yeah.
so excited. We're just bombarding her with all of our questions all at once. Not sticking to a very structured script because we are so excited.
That's all right though.
This is the
We're
best.
getting it done. We're making it
This
happen.
is the
Okay,
vibe.
I'm over
so
here eating pizza while I'm over here on the podcast. It is
so
what it is.
this is my rainbow sword.
Yeah.
This is actually my second like sparring sword. So it's from the same maker that it came from the same place that from the like the sword that I showed you. It came from
Hmm.
the same maker. I specifically asked them to give me a rainbow wrap. So it's cord and it's dyed. They don't really offer this as like a like a preset, but I specifically asked them to have a rainbow sword because why not, right? Like I feel like it reflects my personality.
It's
All right.
awesome. It's unique.
Yeah, and
Like,
it's got this ring hilt as well.
yeah.
Yeah, it adds a
That's a
little bit.
beautiful
What is
sword.
that
Thank
for?
you.
What do you, do
So
you, can you,
it's a safety feature.
okay.
So when you don't have a ring hilt, so this is the smooth side, right? It adds a little bit of protection to your hands because without the ring, it's easy to just have the other sword just slide and like catch your
Oh,
finger.
Oh.
So
oh.
with this, it's so hard to show on the screen. but but if you have the hilt, it'll catch the blade. So you
Gotcha.
have that extra protection. I know some
Oh,
people like it, some people don't. There's some debates about it. I've seen people have doubles. I only have one. But yeah, this is my
okay.
favorite sword. This is the first sword that I used at my very first longsword tournament. I competed in my first longsword tournament just this past February. Um,
Nice.
yeah, I went to Southern California to compete, and it was a lot of fun. Was I good? I did okay. I didn't get out of my pools, but everybody remembered the tiny brown girl who was fighting for her life in the in the pools.
That's all
So
right though.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
making
okay.
waves. You know what I'm
Yeah,
We're
saying?
really
I'm
cheering
okay.
for you.
I'm okay with that.
I would cheer so hard for you if I saw you there. I was
Yeah,
like,
it was really funny because I did not get out of the pool, so it was a 5 person pool, and I felt pretty good. Like I was fighting with a lot of issues because I'm a very small person. I'm 4'10". I'm a little bit muscular now, but still I'm built small. So this is one thing that I also have taken into like my own like quest in this fencing world is to like kind of like push people into realizing that people like me exist, and that kind of push makers to innovate so that I don't have to pay extra and like wait forever to like get safety gear, to get kitted up,
hmm.
like things that fit me. So like when I was in my first tournament, I was wearing these gloves, the smallest gloves that I could find, and they were huge on me.
Mm.
And I have dropped my sword like 4 different occasions on 4 different matches, and because they were so big, it's so hard. It's like
And then that's
imagine
not safe. What's the point?
imagine grabbing onto something like with a like bed sheet.
Okay, or like with like
That's
welder's mitts on or something, right?
Yeah,
You
so that's how
like,
it felt,
It's
and you're
very
trying.
obscure
Yeah.
example, Callie. Elders Mitch.
So
yeah, you
it's
guys didn't grow up welding.
so it's kind of like wearing a welder's mitt, or like just holding a sheet, and you're trying to like like a spread out sheet, right? And you're trying to like grab onto something. It's impossible. It's hard. So
Yeah.
I was like crying in between my matches because I was so
Oh,
frustrated, and I was also like freaked out because it was my first time. And then they would like, okay, you're on deck. I would stop crying, put my mask back on, and then fight again. And then I take my mask back off and then cry again. So that was like my whole, it was, it was traumatizing.
That's a very emotional experience.
But you pulled through.
It was a very emotional. I pulled through, and so I set very low goals for my first tournament. All I wanted was to have like a clean point for every match. I superseded those expectations. I almost beat multiple people in that. I just didn't have the right like technique yet. So I was just getting like, like bonked in the head. I got booped because I'm short. I'm the shortest person in my pool. And so I was also fighting with a jacket that's been barely broken in, so it's very stiff. So having like the high guards was very hard. So like, imagine like having like, really thick puncture proof fabric that has like stuffing on the inside, right?
Fireman's vest for another
and
reference.
and it's like new, right? And you can't, like, it's impossible to have this like high guard like this. And so, and which is super important for someone like me. My
shoulders burn just looking at you.
Yeah, so and that's very important for someone like me, because most of the time everybody is taller than me, so the easiest target is my head. So it was really hard to have that, so I have all of these like factors going against me, but I still made my goals, and a lot of people were surprised that it was my first tournament. They were like, well, it didn't look like it was your first tournament. You were fighting like pretty well. And I was like, I must say, I'm like, thank you.
I've seen your videos. You're very fierce.
Oh, thank you.
I don't want to hear all this 4'10", 4'11", whatever. I don't want to hear none of that. You're very fierce, and I'm scared of you.
I try.
Yeah. It makes me think of the quote from The Two Towers. It's Eomer, I think, is kind of making fun of Merry for wanting to go to battle, and he says, I don't doubt the strength of his heart, just the reach of his arm.
That's one of my favorite quotes as a short fencer from the movie, because it's true. Like, reach does play into is a factor when you're fencing. I have to fight other people in a different way, and I have to do things to close that distance, because I'm very short. Like, they could reach me before I could reach them. And so, yeah, it's true. Like, the reach of the arm definitely, should make you worried. But I do love, that's one of my favorite quotes. Like, I post that every so often to like remind my friends, like, don't doubt my heart, but he's got my reach.
I'm only, my reach is crazy. My reach isn't that crazy right now.
Yeah. So I do a lot of footwork, and I have a pretty crazy like squatting power. And a lot, and it's funny, when I do like when I try and like reach with my sword with just like one squat, I can reach pretty far, more than people like expect. So it's kind of like a fun party trick.
Little trick I got, you know what I mean? So that's awesome. Your bravery is in keeping up with something like that. That can be so daunting. Being so small, being a woman of color in a pretty white male dominated sport, probably I'd say. It's it shows your bravery, and there's characters that you remind me of in the Lord of the Rings. For example, obviously Eowyn, she is the one who kills the Witch King. So that's somebody you can look up to. But there's another female lady who is I just love her character, and if you get a chance, I want you to read up on her. Her name is Lady Haleth, and literally, she is in the book The Silmarillion, and she literally, her father and her brother get killed, and they were the leaders of her people, so she has to take this up, and she leads her people and holds off these orcs that are raiding for days, and then finally help comes, and they're like, wow, you did good, you guys are welcome to take our protection. And instead of just agreeing and being like, okay, thanks, she's like, nah, I'm gonna lead my people, we're gonna get out of here, I'm gonna lead them to where they want to. She leads them through this impossible place where it's terrible, like this terrible valley, and she leads them on her own, and she's just so brave, and literally she gets offered this land to live in, and literally there was one condition: hey, make sure that the orcs don't come and pass this part. You know what I'm saying? And then the person is telling her that looks at her and they say, like, which, like, she could have just been like, thank you or whatever, but she's
Yeah.
so stern and steadfast with herself that she's just like, my brother and my dad got killed by the war. Like, what do you think? Like, what do you think? It was like, that's a stupid question. Like, that's a stupid thing to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, she's like, where my brother? Where my dad? Of course, I'm not going to let the orcs pass. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And her being a female and the portrayal of females in so many art forms, you know, are just like, oh, thanks for the help. Oh, but she's just stern and she's talking to highborn elves and people that are, you know, supposedly, you know, much stronger and higher than her. And she's just like, who you think you're talking to? I'm going to lead my people. And she leads them and they become one of the three main peoples of Middle Earth. One of the three groups of the Edine. So they have the people of Haleth, they have the people of Hador and the people of Bayor. So she makes up one of those groups, and I just think that it's awesome. And you know, your fierceness and your steadfastness and not giving up reminds me very much of her. And
That's
I
so
want you to
cool.
check that story out. It's
I
pretty cool.
definitely want to. I also want. So I do love Eowyn. She, again, like, please don't judge me. I only know the movies right now.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all
But
good.
she was one of, like, the characters that I could relate to as, like, a female fencer. And, like, just her story in I don't know how her story is, like, in the books, but, like, in the movie she was like, you don't belong here, like, you shouldn't be fighting. And she talks about, like, fighting for, why can't she fight for the people that she cares about. And, and she's like, just bound by, like, the conventions of, her people. Like, she's a chick. Like, you have no, you don't have any business in the battlefield, right? And again, like, Hima's very, again, you know male dominated. And it was just like, I could see myself in her. And so much so that I got a tattoo. That it's
Oh,
a Witcher slash, like, Lord of the Rings, like, mashup. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Witcher. There is
yes.
there's a
I
character. Yeah, there's a character.
I've
So
heard of such things.
so I've
It's a
read.
show, yeah.
Yeah, I've read the books. And seen the show. I prefer the books. And I feel like you guys, like, can, like, relate to that. But I also, Witcher 3 is my favorite game. And in the
It's a
game,
great game.
yeah, so in the game, Ciri has a sword. And so I was like, these are two of my favorite women who sword fight. I have to, like, mash it up.
And we are back. Had a little bit of a technical difficulty. So if you noticed during the podcast, there was a weird editing or splicing, don't worry about that. Yeah, the good thing is that we get to see Jana's leg again. So if we didn't see that part, you know, I had to clip that part. Jana was showing us her tattoo. We were talking about the lady Eowyn. And she likes The Witcher, and I'm going to let her get into that whole spiel one more time, and we get to see the very provocative tattoo on her leg. And I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to watch.
It's very professional and tasteful.
Thank you. So yeah, I was very inspired as a female fencer. There's not a lot of inspirational pop culture icons for me that I actually, like, are drawn to. And Eowyn and Cirilla from Witcher 3 were the two that really, like, stuck out the most, and I was just drawn to these characters. And so I had a tattoo done a year ago, and it is a Witcher Lord of the Rings mashup, and I will just show you guys what it looks like
Oh,
one more
here we
time
go.
with feelings.
All right.
Okay, so all right, so oops, this way. So I have Ciri's sword, Zirael. So that's her sword right
Okay.
there.
Oh.
And then I have the Witch King of Angmar's helmet from the movie.
That's my favorite character.
Yeah. It's such a sick design. It's so cool to just have it tattooed on my leg. And then I have Lilac and Gooseberries from Witcher 3. And
Nice.
then symbol, please correct my pronunciation. I just know
We
how it,
we couldn't pronounce it any better. I
I
think
think
it's
it's
single,
Simbrathil, yeah.
yeah,
single,
it's
single.
yeah, it's I just know how to spell it. I'm not sure how to say it, but it's the flower that grows on top of the tombs of the kings of Rohan.
Yeah.
So I have that, and yeah, this is my favorite tattoo that I have on my body.
Oh
Um,
man,
also
It's a
it
pretty
is.
good
Swordsman.
It
one.
is.
It is
It's our
fierce.
favorite tattoo as well. No, it's not.
Thank you.
Just
Some
my
people have
fiance is
like
gonna
I've
see this
seen
and kick me
different
out the house.
people's Lord of the Rings tattoos, and like they're always awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen like one I don't like yet.
My favorite one that I've seen is Sauron like doing hula hoop with the one ring. Have y'all seen that?
I have not seen that.
Oh my gosh, it is so funny, y'all.
I
I
gotta
have
get
to
mine
find it.
touched up, but I don't know if you guys can see that one. But this is literally the insignia that's on the ring with Sauron
Oh,
in the
that's so
middle there.
cool.
But being how dark I am, I have to get, and this is on the elbow. I have to keep getting this touched up, so it's a little, but it
Yeah.
has negative space for the writing and everything. But it looks really cool. Like when I first got it, it looked really cool. But I got to get white spaces to fill out the negative space,
Yeah.
Because they
right?
sort of
You know what I mean?
bleed
You know,
together, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it bleeds together a little bit, but it's still cool.
That
That's
is
so cool.
So
awesome. I need to get
Yes.
mine. I need
Lord
to
of the
get a Lord
Rings.
of
yes,
the
you
Rings.
are failing right now. Me and Jenna are way cooler than you.
You are.
Get on the program, Callie.
I have
So
to call up my local tattooist and get a session booked.
Do it.
there is
Do it.
one more sword I wanted to talk about
Uh-huh.
before we, get out of here. It is
Just one?
probably
There's so many.
there's so many. I mean, you could throw the swords at me. I'll give brief explanations, but we got to talk about Angler Hill, also known as Gorthang, the Irons of Death. Literally, this sword is the sword that kills Morgoth in the final battle, and it is also a cursed, very famous sword. It was made by Eol the Dark Elf, who was a Cinderin elf, and he was a great smith. He learned his craft from the dwarves of the Blue Mountains. Those kingdoms are the kingdom of Belagost and the kingdom of Nargrod, and he learned his smithcraft from them. He found this special ore from a fallen meteorite, and it was a black ore, and he made two swords out of this ore, and one was Angleril and one was Anglerhill, and literally he gave Anglerhill away to King Thingol for leave to dwell in another forest apart from Doriath, known as Nan Elmoth. So King Thingol and Eol were related, but he was a very dark elf in the sense that he didn't like the sunlight. He didn't want to be around anybody. He didn't really like anybody. He was very much an asshole. And he was like, "Yo, can I go dwell over there?" So King Thingol was like, "Well, you give me that sword, you can dwell over there." So he kept Angarel, and that was his sword. In Angler Hill, he gave to King Thingol. Very cool information about this sword. The dark heart of its maker, which I told you Eol was very much an asshole, is in the sword. So it sat in King Thingol's armory, and this young man named Turin Turambar grew up in Doriath in the Tindar Kingdom, but he was a man, so it was very irregular. But he was loved, and he was the adopted son of Thingol. And he got into some stuff, and he was cursed himself, and he ended up having to leave, and he fled. His best friend was one of the captains of of Doriath, of the Sindar elves. His name was Beleg Strongbow, and he went to find his friend. He went and he found his friend Turin, and Turin still didn't want to come back. So then he went to Thingol and told him, "Hey man, I found him. He won't come back. But you know what? Because I love him so much, I'm going to go find him again. I'm going to try to convince him to come back, or at least stay with him or help him." And Thingol was like, "Thank you, man. You've always helped me. You can have anything that is in my halls, man." And literally, he picked the sword Anglerhill because he wanted to be able to fight better with orcs becoming so close. He used a bow. His name is literally Strongbow. And so he was like, "I can't, they're coming so close. I need a sword." So being that he saw, Anglerhill and how dope it was, his black sword is very powerful, he chose that sword. But alas, it was cursed. And Melian, the queen of the Sindar, who was a Maya spirit, very much strong, she knew things in the future. She tried to warn him. She said, "That sword is cursed. Don't do it." But he did it anyway. and he ends up finding Turin. They have, they're best friends. They go on these adventures. They fight valiantly and do all this stuff. But he ends up, Turin ends up getting captured. Beleg ends up taking the sword and going and saving him, and he uses the sword to free Turin, to cut his bonds because he was captured. And the sword slips and pricks Turin. And when he wakes up out of his stupor, he doesn't know that it's Beleg there. He thinks it's one of his people that captured him, and he wrestles the sword from Beleg and he stabs him and kills Beleg, his best friend, his
Oh
dearest friend,
no.
with the sword, Anglerhill. And then Turin wields the sword after being horrified that he kills his friend. But Turin is cursed by a whole nother reason too long to explain. And he uses this black sword to great effect. And he literally is, they call him the Mormagil, which is the black sword. Like, he's literally makes his sword famous, and the sword makes him famous. And he goes through all these trials and tribulations, and he has to face a dragon. And he uses the sword to kill the dragon, the first dragon, Glaurung. And he kills the dragon with this sword. But alas, the blood from the dragon spurts out on Turin's hand. He passes out from it, after he tries to pull the sword from the dragon's guts. He wakes up, he finds out some crazy information. He ends up wrongfully killing somebody with that sword. He finds out the woman he loves is actually his sister,
Oh
and he'd been
no.
married to her, and she killed herself after finding out that was her brother. And he literally, his whole life was cursed. And he looks at the sword and he says, you know what? My whole life is just terrible and just like a curse. Will you kill me? And the sword actually answers him and says, yeah, I'll drink your blood. And he falls on the sword and he kills him, and the sword breaks underneath him, and he is buried at the mound of the hapless, and the sword is buried with him. It is tragic, and the sword is cursed, and it is just imagine. Just imagine.
That is some Game of Thrones shit right there.
Yeah,
Beyond.
the
Game of Thrones
Silmarillion
has
is
nothing
drama.
on. Read the Children of Hurin. It is something where, from such bravery and such like defiance, such a great act which saved so many people,
Yeah.
cursed so many other people, and it is so sad. And that sword is one of the most famous swords. But I think he gets his redemption in the end when he uses that sword to kill Morgoth, the literally the person who, or the being that created all the problems in Middle Earth.
Right.
So at the
So
end, he
cool.
gets some kind of recompense and retaliation. But oh man, it's sad. So
That's
yeah,
crazy.
Kelly, let's talk about some more swords.
Whoa,
That was intense.
Yeah, no, the first stage stories are definitely
Crazy, man.
yeah, but I don't know. I just think they're way more interesting. They're so like
Yeah, that's so dope.
visceral.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
loved it. I was like gasping the whole time.
Yeah,
My mouth
And
dropped
I
open.
I was being vague.
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
oh
I was
yeah.
being
No, they get.
very vague. His life is,
It's not good.
for
It's
lack
not a
of a
good
better
time.
term, his life was fucked.
Oh
His
Yeah.
life
gosh.
was
Yeah.
fucked up, man.
Oh yeah.
It was crazy. So yeah, that's one of the most famous swords. And then we have another sword, Orcris the Goblin Cleaver. Orcris the Goblin Cleaver, a magnificent sword. It was wielded by some people think Ecthelion of the Fountain in Gondolin, but it's not for certain. But I'd like to believe it was in my canon. And then it was wielded by Thorin Oakenshield of the Lonely Mountain, and what I'm saying, it was buried with him after his demise. And it literally glows blue when orcs are close. So since it's on his tomb and it's under the mountain, if ever the mountain was getting attacked by orcs, it would be warned, because the sword would glow blue and warn them that orcs were coming. And it would never, be attacked by surprise ever again because of that sword. So that's a more, even though he died, it was a more favorable story to hear, and much better ending.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. I do feel much better. Um, Orcrist is also very beautiful. It's interesting that it belonged to the dwarf king Thorin, because I find that the design of Orcrist is very elvish. It's got like a bit of a curve to it.
Yeah.
Which whereas the other ones, the swords, Anduril and Glamdring, Harrogrim, they're very much like just
Yeah.
straight long
And
swords.
who did Harrogrim belong to, Callie?
Oh well, Peregrine belonged to King Theoden. Was no I actually have a question back for you. Was the sword only made for the movies, or was that described in the books? Because in the movies
It
it's
is
beautiful
described
and
in the
it's got
book.
these two horses sort of around the hilt, and that they're making kind of like a
Well,
heart
the
with
movie
their
design is always going to be a little off from the book, but Harrogrim is very much so described in the book. Aemir actually brings the King Theoden his sword in the hall, the Golden Hall of Medici, when Gandalf, fights off Saruman and releases him from his, his curse or hypnosis, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I would feel better if I had my sword in my hand, and Aemir brings him his sword, and he very much so rises up and rises to the challenge and becomes who he's supposed to be, King Theoden, who is one of the best characters in the Lord of the Rings. Absolutely wonderful. So his sword is mentioned and known, and yes, it's a real thing.
Awesome. All right, last two. And technically they're not swords, but for the size of the people wearing them, and they were considered to be swords. Um, and I think that's a lovely way to round off our discussion. Us all being under 5'5". So, I would like. So I guess the most uh one that most people would know is Sting.
Sting. Sting is also forged in Gondolin, also glowed blue. It was a very short blade, probably more of a dagger, but it could be used as a sword by a child or a hobbit, which is exactly what happened. It was used by Bilbo Baggins originally, and then it was used by Frodo, his cousin or nephew, or whichever one you want to use. Terms in Hobbiton were interchangeable depending upon the age of the hobbit and the closeness of the family. So yes, this sword was literally made by the elves of Gondolin, and it glue blue, and it was found in a troll horde in the movie or the book The Hobbit, right along with Glamdring and Orcrist. Now, even though these swords were made by elves, the greatest smith in Gondolin was Aol, not Aol, was Aol's son, Maeglin, uh, who was also taught by the dwarves. So I'd like to think that these swords were very much inspired by the skill of the dwarves. Can you tell that I like the dwarves and their makes much better than the elves? Nah, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'd like to think that being that he was the greatest smith and craftsman in Gondolin, and he made the greatest weapons. It said that he found special ore from a mine called Ankabar, and he would make all these special weapons. I like to think that those swords, being that they're the greatest, and he was right hand of the king. The king was his uncle. That he made the king's sword. He made Orcrist, one of the captain's sword, and he made Sting. Um, I have a headcanon that he made Sting for Arundel as a gift because he was in love with his cousin Idril Celebrimbor, who was Arundel's mother, and trying to woo her over. He like, oh, let me make your son a sword, and I think that's my headcanon for that. So yes, Sting was a very special sword. It could cut through nearly anything. The crazy spider webs of Shelob and all of that. And the cool fact is that Gondolin was just above where the spiders were. They dwelt in a place called, Ered Golgotha, the mountains of Terror, and just below that, they dwelt in a valley called Nan Dungorthep, the Valley of Dreadful Death. It was filled with terrible shadow shapes and spiders, and literally the mother of Shelob, the spider we see at the end of the Lord of the Rings, literally had Shelob there. She bred with other spiders there, and it was a place of terror and dread. And Gondolin literally sat right above it. The encircling mountains were right above that, to the left hand side. And literally, I think they encountered those spiders, and they like, you know what, we got to make some weapons to deal with these webs and things like that, because literally Arathel, Maeglin's mother, had to travel through Nandungortheb, and she got lost, and the captains that guarded her were attacked by the spiders, and she became lost. And this is how literally Maeglin was born because she ended up in Nan Elmoth and married Aol, and they had Megalyn, and then they finally went back to Gondolin. So that experience, losing the king's sister and having to deal with those spiders and coming back and having to tell Turgon, hey, we lost your sister, these spiders attacked us, hey, why don't we make these swords that, you know what I'm saying, like cut through spider webs, and since we're already at war with the orcs, they glow blue. And I think that very much had something to do with it. So forgive me for my long-winded tales, but it's very important when we're talking about these wonderful artifacts, these swords, and these great things.
So cool. You
What?
guys are
Very
so
cool.
cool.
One more, if you will suffer me to ask one more question.
All right.
These blades to me are extremely important, but they probably aren't known by a lot of people because they didn't make it into the movies. I am referring to the barrel blades.
The barrel blades, oh, that is awesome. So if you read the book, you would know that. In the beginning we see, when the fellowship, before the fellowship is formed, we see the hobbits leave Hobbiton, and then they travel to Bree, and they meet Butterbur and they meet Aragorn and all that. But before they actually get there, they have to travel through this place called the Old Forest, and they meet a character named Tom Bombadil. And when they leave the Old Forest, they have to travel to a place called the Burrow Downs. Now, the Burrow Downs is very interesting because it's a place where the Dunedain, the Rangers of the North, the kings of old, and the people of old that are related to the Gondorians, that's the Northern Kingdom that was destroyed. This is where they were buried, and literally the Witch King of Angmar, who we obviously see, who you have the tattoo of, he destroyed the Northern Kingdom years ago. So he went to war with them. And what he did was, he is a necromancer and a sorcerer, just like Sauron. He is Sauron's like second in command. So when he was going to war, destroying the main kingdom, which was Arnor, where the High King sat, he went to war for hundreds of years, and he literally cursed these mounds and sent fell spirits to inhabit the bones of these dead, fallen Numenorians, the Dunedain, the Men of Westerness, whichever one you want to call them. And they became dreadful spirits, and they called barrow wights, very much like living skeleton zombie beings that would just attack, and they were cursed beings. And the men of Numenor, or the men of the Dunedain, literally, that still lived there and fought from the kingdom of Arthedain and Cardilin. Rudauer had been taken over. It was split into three kingdoms, separate kingdoms, but this is all Arnor. They made weapons to fight the Witch King and to fight his spells. And these daggers were among those weapons. Now, I say that to say this, that in the Return of the King, we see Mary stab the Witch King before Eowyn can kill the Witch King. And it is known that the Witch King has a prophecy that he can be killed by no man. But why is that? Because he is one of the ring wraiths, and he dwells in the shadow realm, and there's, he is, being a necromancer and sorcerer, he very powerful. There was some spell, preventing that from happening. And literally, the daggers that were made to fight him in the wars of Arnor fell into the hands of the hobbits. Tom Bombadil got them after he rescued them from one of the burrows and burrow wights. He gave these daggers, and this is the dagger Mary uses to stab the Witch King in the back of the knee. And this is what breaks the spell that's protecting the Witch King, so he can't die. And then Eowyn gives him his death blow, and he is defeated and heard from no more. So these blades are extremely important. The barrel blades are extremely, extremely important, and that is a piece of history that's important. And it's so great to nerd out right now with our resident fencing, ferocious 4'10" beast of a woman,
Yeah.
JannaTheHutt. So, Janna, before we get out of here, I know you were having a little bit of trouble on the internet. I see that they're easing up a little bit with your TikTok account, but really quickly, just go over that, because I know that it was important to you to get that message across, what was going on with you and your account, and let us know how that's faring and going.
Yeah, so I did email the legal side of TikTok and the community manager. I haven't heard anything from it. I got an automated response. The multiple violations and the account warning is still placed on my account, and I have
And this is
actually,
from Showing Swords.
yeah, from Showing Swords. And like, I'm trying to and again, like, I'm one of the people who tries to show people how to handle swords properly, or
You do the
kind of
right thing.
like draw people into like a path to where they can handle weapons properly.
It's
And
gatekeeping done properly, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and and a lot of I don't really do I don't really show a lot, and it's weird because I've posted tournament videos on my those never get taken down, but it's the videos that I do where I'm just literally holding a sword that gets taken down. It's so weird. And
I got an idea. Next
yes.
time, say this sword is fake.
top
Yeah. So
swords,
I
top
was
swords.
told that if I put like a disclaimer in text that it might help. I was doing that, and then I kind of just got a little lax. But the thing
Mhm.
is, like, it still happens though, and like I see
Yeah.
other creators in the sword side of TikTok like not be consistent with that as well, and not get into as much trouble as I have, and they have way more followers than me. And I love sword talk. I love the people in it. But again, just like in the actual community, you don't see a lot of people on sword talk that look like me. And so again, it's like trying to like carve myself into like a little space in that side of of the app. Has been kind of hard. So I'm still waiting on what's going on. I'm trying to like keep engagement going, so I'm posting like just really like benign things right now that has nothing to do with swords. I've migrated a lot of my sword posts for the moment to my Instagram. So I still do like my Star Wars stuff and a little bit of like, fun stuff here and there on my main TikTok account. But yeah, I'm still waiting, and I'm still kind of afraid to like post like literally like anything, even like just me talking, because I have been reported for nudity. And if you know me and follow my account, I've never been like close to being nude on any of the videos I've made.
Yeah. Some people are
And
just haters, and they try to.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I've talked to a couple of people and who has experience on this, or know people who have experience on this kind of problem, and they have told me that it sounds like a very specific like attack on me. So they think that it's not just the algorithm, it's like specific targeting on my
Yeah, that's what it
account.
sounds like.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's hard because as a woman of color, I have spoken out about like the LGBTQIA community. My son is a trans boy, and I have spoken out a lot about being anti-racist, anti-misogyny, and all of that stuff. And so I feel like, and I don't do it all the time. My TikTok account is not, it's not a controversial account, right?
No, not at all.
Like I would post, I would make sure that this is what I believe in, this is what I stand for. But like for
As
the
you should.
most, yeah, but for the most
Mhm.
part, like my content
It's,
is
it's
fun.
funny,
Yeah.
educational. It's awesome.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. And so I have asked people to write the community manager at TikTok.com, just kind of addressing the thing that's going on in my account, just trying to get human eyes on
On
what's
the
going
problem.
on. Yeah, because I feel like there's like a weird glitch happening as well, because I have videos that have been appealed successfully that still is showing as like pending on
Yeah.
my.
Oh,
So yeah, and so it's weird because I have this account by like account warning, like this red thing every time I go on my TikTok. It's just like it says there, account warning on everything. Every time I go on someone's page, every time I log in and look at my own account, it's there. And
oh,
it's very, and it's it's Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month when it
yes, it
happened.
is.
And
Yeah.
so it's been really frustrating because I wanted to be more visible during this time, and I wanted to engage new people.
Mhm.
So it's been kind of frustrating, but I am trying to make the most of it because I do have a good
Make the
amount.
most of it. Make
Yeah,
up that backup. Make that backup account. It
I
really
did.
helps.
I do have my
It's
backup
good.
account.
Now,
It's
have used your backup account.
yes, I
Get out
do.
there.
Yeah.
We will help you in any way possible. We will, duet, stitch anything you need. We try to get you as visible as possible. Even
Yeah.
me right now, I feel like I'm shadow banned. My videos aren't going anywhere, but we fight through these things. Your
Yeah.
perseverance, just like in the tournaments, is key. And
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? We are with you
Yeah.
100%. We
Thank
know
you so
you'll get
much.
through it. and you'll be fine. So just keep being you and keep doing what you do. And we are so thankful to have had you as a guest. And you're a wonderful guest.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been so much fun hanging out with y'all and like learning about the swords of the universe, and it's just it's giving me so much life.
Yes. So I'm gonna let Callie get us out of here with her tip for today, her self care tip, and then we're gonna let us get back to our wonderful regular lives, and you can go back to stabbing people.
Okay, I will.
All right, so we all know the quote from the movies and from the books: "You have my sword, and you have my bow, and you have my axe." But how many of us find it really easy to offer our support, but not really easy to accept that same support from others? So the first step is learning how and when to recognize when you are in a position of needing help from others. The next step is being able to communicate this. So having an already built, already existing support system that you can trust when things aren't maybe going so well is super crucial. So, a good self care tip is to try to build that for yourself when you're having good times, and then when you aren't in such a good place, then you have somewhere to turn to readily. Um, of course, the concept of accepting support from others might force you to work on other areas that you find uncomfortable, such as being vulnerable or being able to accept anything from anybody, whether it's help or gifts or money. But if you find yourself in a situation where you need help, you've reached out for help, and you're getting that help and support from a community, accept it, appreciate it. Don't worry about paying it back. Like, focus on instead, like, those people are there to help you.
Their reward back will be
Right.
you doing good, figuring out what you got to figure out, or fixing whatever issue you had.
Yeah,
So
do
that'll be
what you
there.
need to do, because that's
Do what
what
you need to
that
do.
time that's what they're allowing you to do. And then once you're back on your feet, pay it forward.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
Absolutely.
That is awesome. That are wonderful words, wise words from the magnificent KaliCosplay. It has been an honor and a pleasure to have you wonderful ladies up here for our seventh episode of Voices of Arda. I would love to have you back again. We could talk about your Lekus. We could talk about Star Wars. We could talk about whatever you like. We can. We're always going to combine it with Lord of the Rings some kind of way, so we can have some characters face off against each other. We're going to do that.
Yeah.
We'll talk. We'll talk.
we'll have you. We're gonna have you back. Yeah.
We'll have you back because you're awesome. So
Especially
thank
if you have
guys.
more tattoos to show us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to get some more then.
I'll have to get mine
Or
too.
maybe get my tattoo bag. You're gonna start showing off some flexing.
Everybody off to the tattoo shop now.
All right, guys. You have a wonderful night, and I will see you on our next
Thank you, guys.
episode.
Good night,
Peace.
everybody.